China was getting to the stage where it couldn't fill its factories. China was outsourcing its production to various countries around the world. Bangladesh, the number of factories getting built in Tanzania, basically because China was too expensive for labor compared to Africa. So, how are we going to compete when China's too expensive for many manufacturing jobs? It's a nice idea, I think, and maybe where we should be focusing on is maybe not think about those things like bearings, but think of the real high-end, high-tech space components, engineering sort of stuff, like Norway or even the UK, where its production its manufacturing is really focused on high-end technical stuff with high values, not widgets and gizmos.
I guess something else, Andrew, we shouldn't kid ourselves about is, especially in Victoria, we saw during 6 lockdowns a whole lot of people leave Melbourne and head out to the regions, but that's not a labour force. I think I don't think anyone would say that's a labour force that could work in sort of regional factories or on farms or that sort of thing. These are the tree changes and lifestyle changes, aren't they? These people, the picture of rural Australia in 2022 is probably a whole lot of people who've made a lifestyle choice. They can zoom in or whatever else for their city-based job, and they're really just looking for the country lifestyle rather than country labour.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
They're not going to work in a chicken farm. They're going to be sitting there doing strategy documents for somebody in Melbourne or accounts for somebody. They're not going to be working in a chicken farm. They're white-collar professionals. But they're also, that changes the whole demographic. All of a sudden, they want the same sort of things that they had in the city, whether that's good,
soy lattes and that
coffee,
sort of thing.
Restaurants, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Part of that aspect, though, it is a bit of the work from home component is a bit of a two-edged sword. And I know that's what's driven a lot of this move to the regional hubs, so to speak, is because if you've got the internet connection and you're still within striking distance of getting into the city if you need to, but you might only go in 1 day or 2 days a week or every fortnight or something. But the more and more you have the flexibility to work from home, if your job allows that and you can do your job adequately working from home, the other side of the sword, I guess, the other edge of it is that means that job you do could also be outsourced to somewhere else that's in a lower income country if the skills are there as well for that job. That is a probably unintended consequence of having the flexibility of working from home could be that you could be outsourced yourself to a country where they've got a skilled worker that can do your job and do it from home in India or Vietnam or the Philippines or somewhere else.
I think that's what we've seen in the last 2 years is just the fact that you can work from anywhere. We're having this conversation in 3 different areas. It's easy. I could be in the UK just now, and you wouldn't know any different.
Yeah,
so I think that's what it's taught us.
Yep. Yeah, I was working on at a school during the pandemic, and we were wanting to do a video fly-through of an extension of the school we were doing. You put it out on I've forgotten the name of the app now, but we had bidders from every part of the world, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, people from all parts of Eastern Europe, and naturally, as you talk about supply and demand, we just looked at the product they produced, and if they were equal, then you looked at price. You went, well, this guy's cheaper, so let's go with him. So that's the reality of the modern working world for, I guess, that sort of white-collar digital product. You can be based, in rural Australia and doing that work.
Exactly, 100%. I think we're probably coming up to an hour.
I've got 50 on my clock here. I was going to ask about whether something else maybe we shouldn't kid ourselves about is that whether the government federally would or even states will invest heavily in supply chain improvements on road or rail for our farmers to get product out. Do you see there'd be any reason for that to be a priority for governments to supercharge inland rail or the Murray Basin Rail project or that sort of thing? Why would they spend that in the current environment we're in?
It's a priority before the election, and then it fades away from being a priority usually after the elections. The normal history there, and that's why nothing gets done on those infrastructure projects.
But I think it's too early to say either way. I think there is still a whole bunch of legacy projects in the line, like that inland rail project is still going ahead. But I guess the other thing as well is that we do have an issue with, say, getting our grains out of the country at the moment. Yeah? It's difficult to get our grains out because we've produced so much. Yeah, but that's not 100% just an inland issue. That's a port infrastructure issue as well. And those are privately owned ports. And it's up to private operators to expand those ports. But again, it comes back to that investment. You know, if I'm Jimmy the grain trader, yeah, and I say, look, I'm going to, put 400 million into a new port in Victoria, yeah. Well, that might be a good investment decision whilst we're producing, 33 million ton wheat crop. But when you actually start to look at it and say, well, okay, by the time this is built, we could be in a drought and we'll get no tonnage for it. Because as often as we produce, a 33 million ton crop, we can also produce a 17 million ton crop. And so, you'd be brave to sort of invest in infrastructure at the moment because you'd only be looking at it from the point of view of, well, we need it just now. Well, okay, well, if you build it, you might not need it by the time you've built it.
It's a bit of like a reverse situation to the desalination plants, like, say, in Adelaide or in Melbourne, is that they're rarely being used because you spend a lot of money for a contingency.
And that's fine. Like, I guess that's a government spending and governments spend money on things that are a potential risk. And the desalination plant, when we have a really big drought, we'll be pretty thankful that we got it if we have a super drought type of thing, yeah? But from a private investment point of view, where you can't just, invest millions of dollars, or hundreds of millions of dollars, or billions in things that are for contingency planning. That's just not the reality of commercial operations.
Yeah, that's what you're saying with the ports. There's not a likelihood as private operations that they're going to do what a government might do, like with desal, and go, well, look, we need to scale up the port because it's not really costing the port anything. If anything, they're doing brilliantly out of the fact they've got so much that needs to move through the port.
Yeah, well, look, I think the only exception is places like in South Australia is actually getting investment in ports. And largely that's off the back of there probably wasn't a large enough export capacity there previously. But other places like Western Australia has generally got the capacity. New South Wales has got the capacity for most years. And South Australia was probably a bit lagging behind and it's getting that investment. But it's investment goes where it's needed. And where there's, again, a lack of supply.
I thought I might, before we go, get out of you guys some sort of predictions or things that people might not be seeing in 2023 that might suddenly emerge as a major issue. Do you want to sort of throw a dart at that dartboard and tell us what we might not be expecting that's going to come our way next year?
I think one thing that's been front of mind and a concern is the biosecurity threats that are on our border. I think the risk factors of getting something into the country like a foot and mouth disease or a lumpy skin disease, I think is going to be around for into 2023. And certainly by talking to the experts in those fields, it sounds like the risk factors had increased because of the proximity. So that's a potential big thing that could occur that could be a big shock to the livestock space for sure.
Look, I think next year, the only thing that I think, and I can pretty much guarantee this, is there's going to be so much uncertainty that it's going to be almost impossible to predict. And we've had a lot of uncertainty the last 2 years, and I think that uncertain environment and volatility and unusual events will continue. I think we'll see that as we go into 2023.
Yeah, all I would say was that I reckon that this is probably our last solid La Nina year, and then El Nino, it won't bite hard, I think, in the first year, but so we won't see the immediate impacts, but those squeezes on input costs and maybe a tapering down for some of the output prices we're getting is going to see the farming sector, I think, start to realise we need to invest well from the 2022 and backwards because it's going to get tighter, I reckon, from 2023 forwards.
Yeah, absolutely. The climate aspect there is it'd be most surprising to continue to see the great seasons we've had now 3 years in a row. It's going to come a time where we're going to be in a drought phase within the next 3 to 4 years, I would suspect, and it could be a couple of years worth. So that's going to put some pressure on.
Yep, for sure. Well, we'll have those up there on the podcast, on the AgWatchers podcast and the Flow podcast for posterity. We'll see how right we were in 2023, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Rikki. See you when you got nothing on, mate.
Cheerio.
Cheers.